thank you so much for taking the time tonight, Meg. So you had a big day yesterday.
A little.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the software news?
Sure. So really, it's the next step in our journey to reinvent Hewlett-Packard, which, as Dave mentioned, started with the separation of HP Inc., our printer and PC business, and our enterprise business in November of 2015. And at that time, we said we wanted our strategy to be really to be a leader in the hybrid IT solutions for most of your companies. And that meant being even better in the traditional data center, making sure we were the leader in the software-defined data center, and then, of course, at the intelligent edge of campus, branch, and the edge. And so we announced about 2 months ago that we were separating our enterprise services business, the EDS that our company bought in 2008, to really focus down on that mission. And then yesterday we announced that we were spinning off our software business, our application software business, to merge with Micro Focus. So we've got a very laser-like focused business. We are still in the software business, but it is more the system software business. We're still in the services business. 25% of our revenue will come from our services business, but we're laser-like focused on a smaller mission that I think is mission critical to most of the people in this audience.
So why do you think that that faster, smaller, more focused business is the way forward for you, even as some of your competitors are getting bigger and bigger?
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, I don't know about you, but I have never seen the speed of an industry transformation like we are going through right now. Our industry does this every 10 to 15 years. Think back to mainframe to client server to web 1.0, web 1.0 to web services. We are in the cusp of an enormous transition. I think on the scale of mainframe to the client server transition, and it's happening much faster. And my view is, to be successful, we need to be smaller, more nimble, more agile, with a cash generation machine that allows us to be flexible as we think about whether we want to partner with companies or acquire the next generation of software-defined infrastructure or actually invest in our own innovation. So our view is smaller, more nimble, faster is going to set us apart in this environment.
Okay, now that we've talked a little bit about what you're doing now, I want to go back. So when you first became CEO of eBay, you were coming in with like a lot of great leadership background, but you didn't have a deep technology background.
Right.
Now you were the CEO of eBay, and you are the CEO of HP and now HPE. What have you learned about successfully leading a technology company when you yourself are not an engineer?
Yeah, so when I joined eBay, I was 42 years old, and I was working for a 26-year-old founder by the name of Pierre Omidyar. And Pierre was a technologist, and he knew more about the internet than I will ever know. And so it was one of those partnerships that doesn't often happen in Silicon Valley, a combination of an experienced executive with an entrepreneurial technologist. And so I learned to listen. I learned to listen to customers. I learned to listen to people who knew about this area. And so over 10 years, I became quite an expert on consumer technology, and then landed at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, which was really B2B technology. And someone said to me when I took the original job, "So what do you know about the enterprise?" And I said, "So I bought a lot of server storage and networking." So I had to go on a very steep learning curve to understand the technology trends, where we were headed, and where Hewlett-Packard Enterprise could make the right bets to differentiate ourselves. So I know a lot about technology now, but I am not probably as deep as many of you in this room from a technology perspective, but I've surrounded myself with the right people who can see the trends, who are entrepreneurs at their core, but also understand that most of you in this room need service levels, need support, need it on a global basis. You need to be able to count on technology to run some of the most important companies in the world.
And when you talk to people that are interested in getting into technology now, what advice do you have for people as far as specific skills? Is there a background that makes you think, like, we have to hire this person?
Yeah. So the advice I give to young people today, I was not an engineer as an undergraduate. I was an economics major. In fact, I started as pre-med, if you can imagine. And then I hit organic chemistry, which was a little bit of a challenge. And so I said, that whole organic chemistry thing, how about economics? And so if I had to do it all over again, I would actually be an engineer.
Yeah.
Because I think it sets you up for a disciplined thinking in where we are at the beginning of the, I think, technology revolution. Technology has been the defining industry of our generation, of my generation, of probably most of the people in this room. I think it will be the defining generation for the next 30 to 40 years. So it is a great place to start your career. And frankly, some of the engineering skills are hugely valuable. But what do we look for? We look for self-starters. We look for people with a lot of ability to adapt and be flexible. If nothing else, our industry requires flexibility. It requires the ability to set aside old views of the world and adapt to a new world order in lightning speed. So flexibility, self-starting, a learning person. I mean, someone who at 50 years old is still learning and can actually make the adaptation to what is an entirely different environment than even 5 years ago. So those are sort of the three things I look for in younger people, in hires of veterans. HP is a very big hire of veterans. By the way, I don't know if there are any veterans in the room, fantastic people who do incredible work. So thank you to the veterans. And by the way, they have a perspective that is highly valuable to us. And I liken it to, I'm married to a neurosurgeon. And when I have a bad day in the office and I get wrapped around the axle, it's not a life or death situation. I'm reminded every day I come home, and if my husband makes a mistake, it is actually life and death. And that is an incredible perspective that our veterans bring to us at HPE every day.
I also want to flip that question around. I think a lot of people in this room are probably familiar with just how difficult it is to get the best talent these days. How do you compete and make sure you're getting the absolute best people?
So really, I built on the history of Hewlett-Packard Enterprise. Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard not only hired in Silicon Valley, they hired in Boise, Idaho. They hired in Houston, Texas. They hired in San Diego, California. They hired in Alpharetta, Georgia. And while the war for talent in Silicon Valley is intense and has only gotten more intense in the last 10 years, we like to say that actually you don't own your employees in Silicon Valley, you rent them. And they can walk at any point in time. So while we do have a core group in Silicon Valley, we also hire in places where we are the employer of choice. We get virtually any undergraduate from Rice, from the University of Houston, from the University of Texas, in our Houston facility. And you think about areas around the world, whether it's Sofia, Bulgaria, or San Jose, Costa Rica, or Shanghai, we get incredible people. So you have to have, I think, a diversified hiring strategy that allows you to get the best people who can help your company grow.
I'd also like to talk a little bit about leadership and your leadership style. So when I think about you as a leader, I think about someone who is not afraid to take risks, who is not afraid to make a sometimes controversial decision. I'm thinking back to, when you took that job at eBay, no one knew how big that company was going to be. You ran for governor of California. You took the job at HP when the company was having some problems. You split the company in half. So talk to us a little bit about how you think about risk and how you decide when a risk is worth taking.
Yeah, I think one of my strengths, but also my weaknesses, is often I don't see the downside to situations. And I have learned over time to have a lot of courage. And I have to say, I look back now on the move that my husband and I made to join eBay. $4 million in revenue, as Dave said, 30 employees. We gave up 2 jobs in corporate America. I was running the preschool division at Hasbro. Barney, Arthur Teletubbies, my personal favorite, Mr. Potato Head, to join a no-name internet startup. And my husband gave up a job as the head of the brain tumor program at the Mass General Hospital. And I knew there was something in me that was telling me to be worried about this, because my mother lived in Boston, and every Sunday night she'd come over and have dinner with the family because we had 2 young boys. And at the dinner after we'd made this decision, my husband said, "So you're going to tell your mother tonight, right?" We get to the end of the dinner, my mother leaves, and my husband goes, "I cannot believe you did not tell your mother we are moving to California." But I have to say, what I always ask myself is, what is the worst thing that can happen? And the answer at eBay was, the worst thing that can happen is I get another job. And so it gave me a certain amount of courage. When I joined Hewlett Packard, this was not part of the plan. When you have been CEO of eBay, I often said, why would I ever be another CEO? I would not. But then I ran for governor. And by the way, we should be happy that anyone wants to run for public office. Oh my gosh. This is by far the most difficult thing I have ever done. I mean, just brutal. In public life, no good deed goes unpunished. And so I joined the board of Hewlett Packard, but I'll tell you a little story about how that happened. So when you lose an office, when you lose an election, it's actually quite devastating because we are all parts of organizations, okay? So you're part of Oracle. You guys are part of Dell. When you lose an election, it is a referendum on you. There's no one else there. It's just you. And so it's January after the November election, and I'm sort of depressed. And I'm sitting one afternoon in my house watching Ellen DeGeneres. And my husband comes home early from the hospital and he goes, oh, this is really not good. You need to pull up your socks and get back in the game. And as if on cue, I got a call from Mark Andreessen to join the board of Hewlett Packard. And I said, fantastic, what could go wrong? 12 minutes from my house, incredibly well-run company, join the technology committee, get to hang out with my old friend Mark Andreessen. This is great. And the next thing I knew, the company ran into trouble, and I ended up as the CEO. But I will tell you that being a... But I will tell you, being an experienced CEO made a big difference. Had I been a freshman CEO walking into that situation, I think it would have been much more difficult because I already had a career. And I was able to make the decisions, the bold decisions to reposition this company. So it's just a matter of confidence and knowing that you are doing the right thing for the company. And you cannot read the press. You cannot feel bad about the critics. When I took the job at HP, you might remember, it was not to great acclaim. And the board had persuaded me to do this. And we're sitting at the first board meeting when I was announced. And the press was really not great. You know, Silicon Valley laughing hysterically about Meg Whitman taking over Hewlett Packard. And the board saying, oh, I feel so badly, we persuaded you to do this. I'm reading the press, and I'm looking at the press going, okay, this is the best press I have had in 2.5 years. This is all good. So, you know, it's sort of confidence and the ability to say, you know what, I know in my heart of hearts what the right thing to do is, and let's just keep on going.
You mentioned your mom in passing. I know you've talked about the influence that she had on you becoming a leader. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Yeah, so my mother was one of those amazing World War II generation people. And my mother during World War II really wanted to join the war effort. And there were not many opportunities for women. So she joined the Red Cross. And I think she walked into the office in Boston that was hiring for the Red Cross and said, hey, I'd like to roll some bandages, you know, hang out in Boston. And they said, great, this class of women, we need you to go to New Guinea in the South Pacific. So she flew to San Francisco, got on a troop ship with 1,000 other women, can you imagine, for the 30-day voyage across the Pacific. She did say the best part about that voyage was she lost 30 pounds because she was so seasick. But the troop ship lands at this base in New Guinea, and the base commander says, we have a huge shortage of airplane mechanics and truck mechanics. Which of you women would like to volunteer? Okay, my mother had never looked under the hood of anything. But she said, I guess I go where the need is greatest. So she raised her hand. 4 years later, she was a fully certified airplane mechanic and a fully certified truck mechanic. And for 4 years, thank you. And for 4 years, repaired airplanes and trucks in New Guinea. And so when she was raising my brother and sister and myself, she said, you know, you can do anything you want to do. If I can figure out how to be an airplane mechanic and a truck mechanic, you can do anything you want to do. And interestingly, as a little girl, I believed it. And so that, I think, also sort of gave me a little confidence as I grew up.
I just have one last quick one for you. At Fortune, every year we do this list. It's a list of the most powerful women in business. There are 50 women on it. Our new 2016 list just came out this morning. Meg is on it, as she has been for 9 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
unfortunately, you're one of only 4 tech CEOs on that list. What can we do to get more women and more minorities to come into tech, to stay in tech, and to rise up the ranks?
Yeah. So I'd say a couple of things. Part of this starts with our K through 12 education system. And what I would say is our K through 12 education system was designed for a very different point in time. It was designed at the Industrial Revolution, where you were in a relatively regimented situation and came out of high school and went to work in a factory. And that is not what the job opportunities are today. And so we've got to, I think, revamp our K through 12 education system to encourage women and minorities to go into science, technology, engineering, and math. And if we do not do that, we will end up with an enormous labor shortage. And frankly, NPower is actually helping to bridge that gap. But if this election has laid bare one thing, there is a huge generation, a huge group of people in this country who are being left behind by globalization, by industries that have been completely disrupted. And we have got to be able to train and retrain a workforce to be able to enter our industry, which is where the growth in the economy really is. If you look at California, California is now entirely dependent on Silicon Valley. The reason California is doing very well is Silicon Valley is lifting the entire state. And these are all science, technology, engineering, math, yes, some general management jobs, but my view is we've got to fix our K through 12 system and then rely on organizations like NPower to bring a whole group of people who are excited about a career in technology, who we can train and you can train to take those jobs and then thereby lift up a whole group of people.
Okay, that seems like the perfect place to leave it. Thank you so much.
You're entirely welcome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
She was very good, very good. All of us at NPower, all of our staff and board, we'd like to present you with this small memento as our 2016 annual gala honoree for all of your work and leadership in technology and the fantastic good you do through your foundation. Thank you.
Privilege to be here. Thank you very much for this honor, and thank you to NPower for the good work that you do. I think I just articulated why the work that you do is so essential to, frankly, the future of this country and the workforce that we will all need for our companies to be successful in the past. So here's to NPower. Thank you very much for everything you do. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you.